Or in response. Well,
Yeah. Can you hear me just fine, Kelly?
Yes.
Sweet. Perfect.
Yep.
I wonder if I can make this, not that it's the end of the world.
Do I need to make it any bigger?
No, I just full screened it. It's huge. It's,
Okay.
You can't see, but it's all over our massive wall now.
Okay.
So there we go. All right, we'll start in about 9 minutes. I'll chime in. We'll do it, but you're good to go. Thanks for coming in a little early. I'm gonna go take a quick bio break before we get started and make sure nobody's locked outside.
Yeah, so literally the rightmost bit is the ones place. And the big in the end means the rightmost bit is the ends place. But like, why is something like that? Why is that better? Why is that better?
so there's a lot of people who are like, they're not successful. They're not. I think they can step up it.
I think it was over alternatives.
Well, it's only if you're doing some things that get you use the steps. That's all. That's all.
I think now it's
So that's nice. No, because I think it's like
I don't think
like that specifically I think it's very yeah.
I think like, I mean, it's very much this maybe, but compared to like general population.
Yeah, it's good. I'm really.
Now at least there's one pressure.
The sounds important. And it's be or like, and then like, if they see members, they're just sort of like research. But then if I like step back, they are put in there. They just won't do it until they So sometimes they just at the beginning, they just observe.
People just think we put in those sections that they make sure that they know that they choose for. I'm just thinking. Direction. Direction.
Congratulations. Nice. Awesome.
Is this a first student? My first recurring class. Pretty good. That's good. Yeah. First, second. I like that. Should have been about that. Work out. They're coming bigger. Watch something else. We got harder data. And it's going to be awesome.
Like,
Well, maybe, you
Now
know,
you get
they'll listen to your slippage a little
Exactly.
bit. You won't even notice. Our like $1.5 million.
I mean, in what? I'm not the things that just sense of obsession almost.
We've invented that.
Just the loans. I kind of go
We
back
can literally give
to
you
some
all
stuff
of
like
it.
red returning is terrible. So that's actually giving you anything else to be on. So it depends on.
That was just,
like, part of it happens to me.
Oh.
My,
Carl had some.
but like, I'm trying to say, English moves is like, yeah, it looks like, big Indian is the way, because only the right aspect is paid. It's just the opposite of what you have. It's not usually what I'm hearing, so I do like that. I do see that. You know, I've been very confused because I'm not trying to explain to me a guy that is actually not what I was. Or not, it's
What is Gut Possible? Gut Possible is a cross company, guys on here doing the activity setups and stuff. Screwing it up. It's they provide the financial tools, it's financial tools and software. It's just like for like small types of problems. I think so. I just really think
Just testing. Can y'all hear me okay?
yes.
see
Awesome
surprisingly loud on the projector. I was gonna like wire up the PA. That's the projector. Yeah,
That's actually good.
yeah, it's not.
Well,
Good stuff.
I have the gain on my mic turned up as well.
No, this thing we did like a MIDI web API audio thing a few weeks ago, and we ended up using this, and it was too loud. It was like scary loud.
Right. Yeah,
So-
no, I remember that.
The projector on this thing bangs. Like, it's not the highest quality, but it's a lot louder than you think it's gonna be. Oh right. Well, we're at 6:30 now. Oh, somebody's asking about the Discord. Let me just check stream in the Discord, and then we'll kick this whole thing off. Hasn't gotten anywhere yet, so wait until it's time.
Finally at,
Yeah. They were live. Sweet. Okay. All right, guys, I'm gonna kick this whole thing off. Let me just go double click. Slightly different setup than usual, so I'll be kind of standing in front of the crowd so I don't have to keep turning the mic around. But we have Kelly Williams with us today. I want to welcome to the Silicon Swamp. I don't have any major announcements except the usual. Please come to these on Thursday. We're here Thursdays when we're not here. We've got a good crowd with some regulars and irregulars. Ready? Jim's working on being like regular. Yeah, we're working on it.
And this it was a flat talk, so that was the most important.
The most of yeah, came to the best talk. Missed the trashy ones like mine. So he's got a good eye for quality. So no big updates. I think we are still looking for feedback on if you guys want to do something out at the farm on Halloween in Hopkins. I'm down, but if you want to organize that, just gonna see a little bit of interest. I just don't want to get me and like 3 people sitting outside a farm with no internet, with like limited internet access. I mean, that can be fun in the right light, but I feel like it's just a weird thing to have to organize in a public setting. So like, hit me up on the Discord if you guys want that or a different idea. Let me know. Besides that, we'll hop right into it. Kelly, thank you for joining us today, man.
Happy to. Thank you for having me. Welcome to everybody in Colombia, as well as those of you who are online.
And we actually know people are online because people are in our Discord looking for it. Because I was a little slow getting it up because we don't have our producer here today. So you've got a little bit of audience online. I will funnel questions to you if they have any. The way we normally kick these off before you dive into your cool presentation is ask you a little bit of things about yourself. So Kelly, give us just a quick rundown who you are and what you work on.
So I have always wanted to be a Renaissance person since I was a little kid. Think like Leonardo, and maybe someday I will. It's all about the journey. So in the meantime, I've been working in IT for over 30 years now. I am learning to take pictures. I'm a hand weaver. I've done jewelry, cooked for large groups, and had some music published. So I'm on my way to hopefully one day becoming a Renaissance person. I moved out to Colorado just over a year ago, and it's gorgeous out here. Hit me up if you want to see pictures. But I've had the opportunity to do a lot of traveling, and part of my life changes with moving out here is I took a leap of faith and am pivoting my career into sustainable IT. So with that said, for those of you who would like, here is a link to the PDF with the slides. This will come back up again at the end. So just a quick here, I'll put it back. I'm seeing people with their cameras. Okay, everybody have it that wants it for right now.
Yep, got it. Thank you. And Charles is going to post it to our Discord as well. Before we dive right into it as well, how'd you get into tech, Mike? I mean, Kelly?
So, to be honest with you, I was very fortunate that my parents made sure that we were in good school districts. And so I started working with computers when I was 10 years old. I learned my first assembly language when I was 12. Taught myself 6502 with a book from the library when I was 14. And just kind of went from there. I went off to college, made stupid choices. I also did not have a diagnosis of ADHD at that time, which definitely didn't help. I got Dean's vacation, and 3 weeks later, I was teaching Unix and C at a local community college. You may have heard of it. It's not terribly far from you all. Greenville Tech.
Oh yeah. Where are you from originally?
Upstate New York, Finger Lakes.
Oh, okay. Cool.
But
So
Dad moved south with the jobs, and so I finished up high school in Greenville County, and ended up living in Greenville all told for the better part of a decade.
so
About 7 years.
And I met you, I guess, at SC Decoded, right? About 2 months ago, right?
Yes.
So now that makes a little more sense why you were in the area. You're basically local.
Well, yes. I hadn't seen my parents in a while, and so between the conference in Greenville and speaking at a conference in DC that were just a couple weeks apart, it made sense for me to drive out and spend some time.
All right, well, last big question for you before we let you dive into it. What's some stuff going on in tech, doesn't necessarily have to be software related, that you're excited about?
I'm both excited and scared by some of the LLM and AI. When I was younger, really wanted to get into AI, and then the bubble burst, and because the hype, we didn't have the hardware, we didn't have the software or the network or storage to live up to the hype. So that I'm both excited about because it definitely can be used as a force multiplier. But by the same token, too, it's very resource intensive. Microsoft's water utilization increased by 36% between 2021 and 2022. And in 2022, it was estimated that Microsoft was using, I think, 1.7 billion liters of water.
Wow.
And it's thought that worldwide in 23, we were using somewhere on the order of 30 to 40 billion liters of water worldwide for cooling purposes in IT.
Okay.
So,
Well, the last question before I let you dive into it is, are you a questions during or a questions afters kind of guy?
either way,
Okay. So if you guys have any questions, I'll feed you as I get them. Mike Kelly, the floor is yours. Go for it, and we're all very excited, man.
awesome sauce. And actually, it's Matt.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No worries.
You have the nickname, and I keep flipping between Matt and Kelly. My apologies.
Everybody is, mostly, except for people out here in Colorado. But that said, let's get started. Again, there's the link to the slides. My company is Making Software Greener, and basically the goal for Making Software Greener is to help organizations and individuals cut costs, reduce their environmental impact, address regulatory issues, and make a difference. So here's a little bit about me, and I belong to two organizations. Both are nonprofits. The Green Computing Foundation is a NGO out of India, and the Sustainable IT Manifesto is something that, in a "if you build it, they will come" moment, I posted it to LinkedIn last year to see if there was any traction. Lo and behold, there was, and the Green Computing Foundation uses the Sustainable IT Manifesto as the foundation for their methodologies. I was invited to India to speak at a conference as a result, which was really cool. For those of you who are familiar with the Agile Manifesto, let me assure you that there is no whatsoever overlap or inspiration of the Sustainable IT Manifesto from the Agile Manifesto. And there were sarcasm tags around that. Great artist steal. All right, why are you not going forward? There we go. Okay. So we have a problem. It's not just mine or yours, it's everybody's problem in IT. And the world total. As the world becomes more dependent upon technology, we're going to be using more and more resources. About 94% of the world uses cell phones as their sole way of accessing the internet. At this point, about 65% of the world is on the internet. So there's roughly another 3 to 4 billion people who aren't. And if they're all going to be accessing the internet through cell phones, then that's 3 to 4 billion more phones. And given the lifespan of a phone, generally we're doing pretty good to get 2 years out of them, maybe 3. With the amount of resources that go into making them, we're going to hit some walls. We're going to run out of resources. Why are you being... Okay, I may have... Let's see if this is... Okay. I don't know why this is deciding that it wants not to be going forward, but... So at this point, the IT is using 3.5 to 7% of the world's carbon. Come on. I apologize. I do not know why this is not working properly. You can see it. Okay. I'm just going to have to click on them. So it's projected by 2025, and this projection was from several years ago, that by 2025, IT would be using 7% of the total carbon footprint of the planet. That's roughly equivalent to the airline industry. And when these numbers were put together in 2020, it was projected that by 2040, IT would be using 14% of the world's carbon footprint. So that's twice all of the airlines worldwide. And I really think that these numbers are outdated now, given the AI movement and the effect of it. And one of the elephants, over in the corner that people aren't necessarily talking about is, at this point, every company has IT to some degree. Every company is an IT company or a technology company. So we have a problem. Problems, though, give us opportunities for improvement. And you might think that we need a hero to be able to solve these things, or a heroine. However, we can all be heroes and heroines. So what is sustainable IT? We're going to use as our definition this evening practices that meet our current tech needs without compromising future resources. So this is going to be our definition for this evening. It's methods, practices, ideas, principles that we can use to meet our current needs and the needs for tomorrow, but also have things left for tomorrow. So I'm going to shift gears real quick and come up with a quick 3-step plan for sustainability. And here's our plan. Step 1, we're going to talk about sustainability. Step 2, we'll figure that out later. Step 3, we're going to save the world and profit. And thanks to South Park for the inspiration for this slide. The problem, though, is so many organizations are either ignoring the issue or unaware of the issue. The Green Computing Foundation did a survey, worldwide survey, earlier in the year of the state of sustainable IT. And just shy of 20% of the respondents had never heard of sustainable IT. So we have definitely a problem with awareness. And sustainable IT isn't just electricity. You may have heard that Microsoft is building a new data center in Arizona, and that the plans are for this data center to be carbon neutral. Well, usually when people are talking about being carbon neutral, they're just talking about electricity. I'm really curious how they are planning to cool the data center. People aren't talking about it. How are they going to dispose of old hardware? Are they going to recycle it? Are they going to, donate it to schools, what have you? Where are the resources coming from? Close to where y'all are, in North Carolina, there's a town up in the mountains that unfortunately got hit pretty hard by Helene. That is the world's source of most pure quartz. And it's used in a lot of applications for building hardware. So now that's been disrupted, and who knows how long before that will come back. And there's also supply chain issues. Not only, where is it coming from, but, are there issues with the governments there, where it's coming from? Are there issues with, human rights issues? Are we, destroying the rainforest? Are we infringing upon indigenous peoples? So why does it matter? The planet's going to be just fine. It's humanity that's in trouble. I saw years and years ago a statement that environmentalists aren't trying to save the planet. They're trying to save humanity so that we can continue to live on the planet. So the question isn't so much about saving the planet, it's about saving ourselves. And Mars is not an option. So that's why sustainability in IT matters. It's about securing a future we can live in. So what are the principles and practices? They support reducing costs. They support environmental impact, reducing it, and reducing waste. It's all about these three things primarily. There's more to it. The environmental impact includes mining, for instance. If you have a 2-kilogram laptop, between 4 and 5 pound laptop, the raw resources to build your laptop are 400 kilograms just to build and construct a single laptop. So sustainable IT is about rethinking how we operate, how we can make the technology we rely on more efficient and less damaging to the environment. So what are some of the organizational drivers? Again, reducing costs, regulatory requirements. You may have heard that the EU is requiring ESG reporting. California is as well. And the SEC released guidelines for reporting for publicly traded companies this year. It will be interesting to see with the election whether or not the SEC's guidelines and requirements remain in effect, but we'll see how that goes. Also, there's reputation potentially. If you are, positing yourself as a company that cares about the environment, that cares about green things, then, you have a reputation. This is something that could drive it in your company. Culture, too, can drive organizational adoption of sustainable IT. And unfortunately, a lot of times people focus only on the money. In Europe, a couple of years ago, a survey was performed with managers and engineers, and they found that the incentives for becoming more sustainable had different results between the two groups. A majority of managers wanted to reduce costs and save money. A majority of engineers, however, wanted to save the planet. So how do we go about doing this in an organization? Well, first off, we have to measure things. We have to have good measurements so that we can see what we've changed and how it affects and what progress we've made. You know, if we do some measurements after making a small change and find that we've saved the company money, you know, we can tell management that, and they are more likely to, you know, put sustainability issues to the forefront, because, you know, at the end of the day, organizations and companies need to make money, or else they don't stay around very well. But you might be asking yourself, what can you do? It can feel overwhelming. Change starts with awareness, however. Once you're aware, you can start making conscious decisions and then have the ability to influence your environment, no matter what your role is in tech. And I'm going to shift over a little bit to the badly named 4 pillars of sustainable IT. I'm probably going to rename them, but there's enough stuff out there, enough communication calling it 4 pillars, that barn door may be left open and the horse is already out. But if you are at all familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the pillars here, or the layers of this pyramid, start at the bottom with awareness. Once you have awareness, you can then have consciousness. You know, you're aware that there's an issue. When you become conscious of it, you're able to look around and see places where you could improve, for instance. Then, by learning tools and methods, you can become enabled. And finally, once you're enabled, you can be empowered to make a change, to make an impact. And everybody contributes to sustainability. It's not just the responsibility or role of a CSO. It's not just finance. It's not just a department or a team. It's not the people who run your data center. So whether you're a developer, a systems architect, a product owner, your choices matter. Small decisions, writing efficient code, selecting energy efficient hardware, taking care of technical debt, all of these things add up. So I'm going to step through a number of different roles real quickly. You know, agile practitioners and scrum masters can facilitate sustainability discussions. They can also, you know, in planning, add in room for continuous improvement, for tech debt, for making things more efficient. Your analysts are helpful for data center optimizations, also for tracking metrics. DevOps, you know, they can make a greener or more efficient infrastructure. They can also, one thing that will help is the 3 ways. Not sure if any of you are familiar with the 3 ways, and I can't see enough hands to be able to tell, but the 3 ways were posited by Gene Kim in a book called The Phoenix Project. The first way consists of removing or reducing barriers to delivery of value. So if you have a speed bump in delivering value to your customers, and you can make a change that will allow you to speed up the delivery, then that's really important. And, you know, a lot of organizations spend a lot of time building out a very large, complex CI/CD implementation. And, you know, I've seen companies take 18 months or more to roll it out. You know, it could just be that all they need to do is have some post-it notes on a Kanban board, and they can start delivering value faster and more quickly today. And based off of what they learn from that, when they decide that they want to have a CI/CD system, then they're able to make better choices because they're already familiar with the processes. The second way is fast feedback loops. I don't know about y'all, but there have been projects I've worked on where I did not get any feedback from QA until 6 months after I checked in the code. And of course, this is 2 weeks before it's supposed to go live. And who knows who's touched that file in the meantime, if it's even an issue anymore. So developers can make a difference. Energy efficient coding, serverless computing, reducing technical debt, making good choices. It doesn't have to be the best choice. Quote unquote, the best choice is generally something that costs a lot, frankly. And usually you can find something that's good enough that by making good choices, choosing good algorithms, things like that, you can cut down on your environmental footprint. You can reduce costs. End user support. A lot of their role is education and recommendation of, energy efficient settings, things like that. Hardware engineers and designers, make your hardware more efficient. Over time, CPUs and such have started using less power for the amount of work that they're doing. So this has been in the works for a while, but it's something that we still need to stay conscious of. Leadership needs to set organizational goals around sustainability, and leadership needs to make decisions that promote long-term sustainability goals. And in truth, for an organization to really adopt sustainable IT, it has to come from both the top and the bottom, and they've got to meet somewhere in the middle. Some of this is change management. Some of it is building a culture that encourages people to make choices that are more sustainable. Managers, your project management, make it sustainable. Make ethical vendor selections. If there's two vendors and you're looking at their products and they're pretty much the same and the cost is roughly the same, choose the one that is more sustainable. Product owners, they can identify and set a clear vision for the product. The other thing that they can do is prioritize aligning green features. A lot of this is tech debt. How many people that do development find themselves wishing and trying to persuade their product owner to allow them to be able to take care of some tech debt? Anybody? I think I see one hand in the back.
Yeah,
There.
3-ish, so
Three-ish?
like,
Okay.
yeah, like half the people.
Yeah.
Camera's very Chuck centric.
Yeah.
Charles centric and Chuck behind him.
QA. Identify inefficiencies in the software. Collaborate. Do you really need to run a complete test suite every single time a piece of code is checked in? You might not. It really depends. You might have regulatory reasons for doing so. You might have a culture that insists that you do so. But if you're doing things like blue-green acceptance testing or A/B, then you might not need to do a full regression test every single time. Systems architects, They ensure that their systems that they design can support green practices. And if you're wondering what is the greenest practice set that you could do, putting on my architect hat, I will look at you and with a small smile say, it depends. So what are some practices that you can do? You know, we need to rethink the way we operate. It's not just grand gestures. It's about making thoughtful, measurable changes. From implementing DevOps practices to reducing e-waste. You know, everything that we can do makes a difference. And it's a journey. You know, I hear all of these organizations saying, we're going to be carbon neutral by such and such a date. Well, okay, but that's not all of it. Not only that, but a lot of organizations have made promises that they're now finding that they can't keep. And I know of a number of companies here in Colorado that are in the sustainability area and have more work that they can handle because these companies have made pledges that they're going to meet some arbitrary goal that was chosen by a CEO because it sounded good. And, you know, that the companies are finding that they can't do. And so they're clamoring for help. So, you know, it's a journey. It's a practice. It's not something that we can just say, a year from now, we are going to be, you know, carbon neutral. We're going to reduce our water utilization by 25%, 50%, what have you. And again, it comes back to measurements. Now, this is the earliest quote that I was able to find that talks about the idea of you don't know something until you measure it. Unfortunately, Lord Kelvin was rather verbose and, you know, would use 3 words when he might be able to get away with 2 or 1. But the goal is, you know, have good metrics. This helps you with compliance. This helps you to track improvements that you've made. It also helps you to track cost savings. Practice good DevOps practices. You know, infrastructure as code. Have good metrics. Follow the 3 ways. You know, do cloud optimization. Now, generally, moving to the cloud is considered to be greener than having your own data centers. But again, putting on a architect's hat, it depends. A few years ago, a government in Scotland was going to move to the cloud because they thought that it was greener and that their environmental impact would be lessened as a result. Well, it just so happens that their data centers were all powered by renewable resources, primarily wind and wave. And the data center that they were moving into in this cloud was based in London. And their electricity came from coal. So, as it turned out, they actually weren't being any greener by moving to the cloud. So a lot of it depends. You know, people say, do your research and, you know what you're doing and make informed, educated decisions. Another area that helps is energy efficient hardware. The humidity is really low here this week. I think below 20%. And so, speaking for any length of time, it's, thirsty work.
No
One
worries,
of the
man.
thing- Pardon?
I said no worries.
One of the things that was interesting moving out here was people carrying water bottles everywhere. And, into a restaurant, into a library, into wherever, people bring water with them and drink water all the time. And some of it has to do with the dryness. Some of it also has to do with altitude. And if you don't drink enough and I'm at 5,000 feet here, but, drive 30 miles and I'm up above 10. That's one of the things that if you come out this way for training or whatever, drink lots. You'll need it. The first time I came out, nobody told me. And I was wondering why I was having such bad headaches. But choosing energy efficient hardware, hardware that has a long life cycle, that uses energy more efficiently, whether it be, newer chips that use less resources, whether it be choosing that, this process doesn't have to run on the latest and greatest hardware. This process, it's a batch job. It runs once a month. If it takes 2 minutes extra to run and running it on energy efficient hardware, that's not a bad thing. One of the things that I'm seeing organizations doing is to bring in-house and train their own LLMs. And a lot of the research for that is being done on laptops. You can have a LLM with 70 billion nodes sitting on a laptop. And we aren't talking a very, very high-powered laptop either. A decent gaming laptop, for instance. How are you managing your waste? Are you disposing of it? Are you recycling things? Are you donating them? I'm going to plug here a company called Sage Electronics, and they resell hardware that has depreciated. It's off the books, and it's still very useful. I was able to obtain a MacBook Pro. When I bought it, it was 3 to 4 years old, but I was able to obtain it with 32 gigs of RAM for $500 or $600. This is, if you go out and price a new MacBook Pro, for instance, you're talking $2,000 or more. So there's still a lot of life left in it. Let's talk for a little bit about sustainable coding. Having efficient code. And I'll show you some code that's poorly written in a few moments, as well as some code that is the same code but written a bit better. As well as, I have a few stories. Recently I had a situation with a client that they added on a new customer to use software as a service module. And this new customer used their software in a way that was very different from what the client was expecting. And as a result, the database was getting hammered. What had been taking a minute or two for processing ended up taking 70 minutes or more. The database server was on its knees. And anyone want to take a guess as to what the issue was? The fundamental problem? It was a bad query. Whoever had written the code for that application was running a query that had a large view that joined like 12 tables together, and they were grabbing one field from this view and dumping the rest out. And that query by itself was, if the nothing else was going on the database server, was taking 3 to 4, maybe 5 seconds. As the database server was falling over, it was taking 2 to 3 minutes for that query. So, having DBAs look at your queries is very useful. So I wrote a small query that got the data that they were looking for, put it in instead of using the view, and that 70 minutes went down to 7 seconds. And that's including email time. So, going from 70 minutes to 70 seconds, and a huge reduction in resources in that. Also, too, choosing good algorithms is really, really important. Making a study of the fundamental algorithms of IT and when to use them is something that's really important as IT craftspeople, as professionals. It's been said that if all you have is a hammer, everything starts to look like a nail. And as craftspeople, we really need more tools in our toolbox. The more we can have, the better. One thing that I've seen is, and I'm going to pick on Java developers here. Sorry if there's any Java developers in the room. But one thing that a lot of more junior Java developers do is to put hashes inside hashes. And every instance of a hash has a large amount of overhead. Because if you recall, a hash allows you to take a universe and cram it into a tiny, tiny, tiny little bit of space. You could say almost that hashes are the Robin Williams genie of data structures. But there's other things that I've seen over the years. We had an instance where a pure OO architect had designed a system where they would take a block of work off of a queue, and this process, this workflow, is linear. Except for there's one possible branch at the very last step. So they take something off the queue, they do a little bit with it, put it back on the queue. Take it off the queue, do a little bit, put it back on the queue. And they were allocating and deallocating 3 gigabytes of RAM every couple seconds. And so we went back and forth with them for a while, and they finally wrote it as a single method rather than using queues, and marshalling and unmarshalling are very expensive. And by doing that, they improved their performance by 40%. And your language choice matters. I'm going to apologize. This is really tiny. Download slides. It's a PDF file. But this is a comparison of 5 different languages. We have Java, C, Go, Python, and Ruby. And these are doing bubble sorts of different sizes of arrays of data. They're all reading in from standard in. They're all writing the results out to standard out. And start off with 1,000 elements all the way up to 1,000,000 elements. And if you recall, bubble sorts basically all CPU bound. There's no real anything other than CPU. Once you've read your array into memory, you're not going to be doing anything other than swapping pairs. And the reason I chose Bubble Sort was it's simple to implement, and it's something that most people in IT would be familiar with. It turns out that with 1 million records, it took anywhere from about 19 minutes to 20 hours, depending on the language. The code was all doing the same thing. There was nothing special from language to language other than, what that language brings. And, the end story at the end of the day is language choice matters. I was surprised that Java ran faster than C. In each of these cases, everything was running in a container. The container was based on Alpine, so it was very lightweight. And while the tests were running, nothing else was running on that laptop. So, trying to keep it as apples to apples as possible. The code was compiled inside that container, for instance. And so, as a result, we can see that some
Kelly, can you
languages
hear
are-
us? Oh, sorry, we
Yes.
lost you for a second there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
My apologies. That's
All
probably
right.
our internet.
Let me rewind. What's the last thing you heard?
You were maybe just start from your languages slide, and
Okay.
we put it bigger up on the screen for people, so make it a little easier for them
Yeah.
to read it.
Let's see what I can do. I'm not sure why it went out from full-sized. At any rate, I'll highlight. Here's.
I've also got it up on. I put the PDF up so people could read it as well, so you can talk through it. They can
Okay.
see that slide a little better.
Thank you. So basically, the tests were run on an Alpine container running under Docker. The applications or languages that needed to be compiled were all compiled in that container, and trying to remove any differences that I could make. While it was running, nothing else was running on the laptop. The reason I chose Bubble Sort is it's CPU bound. It's also very simple to implement and something that most people in IT would have heard about. With 1 million records, it took anywhere from about 19 minutes to over 20 hours. Now, one of the things I do want to do is rerun some of these tests, like for the Python and for Ruby, using other interpreters, like for instance JRuby. And there's another one now that's quite a bit faster for some of the benchmarks. It's like 20% or 20 times faster rather than stock Ruby, for instance. But these are things that are just showing that your choice of language can matter. Now, that said, from a business standpoint, the business, as much as possible, wants to hire people that have a certain set of skills. And, it makes it easier for maintenance and so forth. The reasons for doing this, are varied, but you might find that, say, if you have a service that runs very slowly or takes a lot of resources, you might re-implement it in a smaller footprint and then be able to, get better performance, reduce your costs, reduce your resource utilization. You know, other things you can do is choose green hosting. You know, like I mentioned before, it's generally true that cloud providers are and have a smaller environmental footprint. Unfortunately, in the last few years, there's been a movement to taking stuff out of the cloud and putting it on-prem because they're viewing it as being less expensive. Unfortunately, a lot of times when people move to the cloud, they do things like a lift and shift, where they take their existing infrastructure, their existing architecture, and just move it up to the cloud, not taking advantage of any of the things that makes a cloud more efficient. You know, they're not doing anything with spinning up and spinning down resources as needed. They're not doing anything with having the data that's being used close to, physically located close to where it's actually being used. Not doing any of those sorts of things. You know, smart testing. You know, do you need 100% code coverage? Maybe, maybe not. Most of the thought leaders at this point are saying, no, don't shoot for 100% code coverage, because you're going to be spending all your time writing tests and there's a diminishing amount of returns. So some people say, you know, 90% is good. Other people say 80% is good. You know, again, it depends. But the less tests you're running, the less resources you're using. You know, it comes down to resource management. How many copies of data do you really need? You know, how much network traffic are you consuming by having, say for instance, data sitting on the left coast and your servers sitting on, you know, in the east? You know, are you over provisioned? I would say that a lot of cloud implementations are over provisioned, especially if when their applications move to the cloud, if they did a lift and shift. Continuous improvement. You know, find a pain point, reduce the pain, measure your impact, rinse and repeat. You know, a lot of it's tech debt. Some of it can be, you know, other sorts of inefficiencies. You know, I mentioned that one customer that had a piece of code that was really written pretty lazily. And, you know, they hit a threshold and, you know, just like the straw that broke the camel's back, their efficiency tanked. The database tanked. And this database was used by other applications. So this one poorly written app affected a number of applications and a number of customers. So what are some of the benefits? Again, we've talked about this, but you know, we're reducing our operating costs. We are avoiding regulatory complications. We are having a positive impact. We're enhancing our reputation. You know, we are, and unfortunately there's a lot of greenwashing that goes on. But it's something. Even if it's a baby step, it's something. So if you take away nothing else today, I'd like to suggest that you be pragmatic. It's been said that the enemy of the perfect is the good. We don't need perfection. We need progress. It's better to make small, meaningful improvements now rather than waiting for the perfect solution. One small win leads to more. With time, these changes compound And that's when we can start to see real transformation, see real progress. Not to say that, you won't have progress that's measurable before then, but it's something that you can look at. We were here and now we're here in terms of our footprint, our utilization. Make better choices. As IT professionals, we have the ability to make choices about how we implement solutions. Very, very seldom is there a best solution. We need to, of course, measure the costs associated with the implementation. The cost to the business, the cost to how long it takes to implement, the resources consumed, and so forth. And a lot of times, it comes down to a business decision. But we can still make good choices. We can make informed choices. And, as such, we're making progress. We want to reduce our pain points, make small, gradual improvements. I had the opportunity to work with a number of people who had worked at Bell Labs. There had been a Bell Labs site in Columbus, Ohio, where I was living. And, it closed down. And a number of people ended up at the company I was working for. And, just hearing and learning from their wisdom, learning from their experience. One of the things that has stuck with me is the idea of load, fire, aim. Make a guess. Test it. If you can test something in 10 minutes and get a result, if nothing else, you found out something that doesn't work and it only took you 10 minutes. Make these things. Artillery has this concept called a ranging shot. You don't really know what the wind's going to be like. You don't know what some of the atmosphere is like. So their first shot, they don't expect to hit. They make a good guess and then correct from there. And that's the idea behind load, fire, aim. Guess something that's low-hanging fruit. Try to make it better. Measure the change. And, over time, you're going to save money. You're going to be more efficient. And it's a journey. It's not something that you're going to finish overnight. So I'll pull up that code if people are interested, or I can stick it out on GitHub. Either way. The original code was written for a workshop to go through and take an architecture that's got issues. And
I think we would like to see the code if you want to
Okay.
pop it up for a second. And yeah, I mean,
Yep.
also if you can share it on GitHub later, I'll make sure that it goes out over the over our Discord to the YouTube.
will do. And let me do this. And let's change the share. We're going to share my screen and a particular window. And I am choosing the one true editor. I'm big in this. Are you all able to see it to some degree?
Yeah, it shows up pretty good.
Okay. Now, I do use VI for some things, but when I really want to get work done, I use Emacs, the one true editor.
Dual screen.
There we go. All right, so the idea behind this code for the workshop is a API for querying Shakespeare. You know, that supports things like give me list of the words that a particular character says. Give me a count of the words for a particular play. Things like that. And so here on the left is the before. And we're using something called TinyDB, which is basically a way of querying JSON. It's not necessarily the most efficient thing, but it does run in memory. And so the database of the Shakespeare data is about 25 megs. And so it all fits in memory. And the TinyDB is actually not that slow. So this might be something where it's good enough. And so we are using a Python library called FastAPI. It basically allows us to define quickly and easily an API and its endpoints. So it's got some decoration, some syntactic sugar that gets processed. And, you know, of course, there's a hello world in here. Do we need this API endpoint? No, it's one of the things that should be removed in the process of the workshop. So we can get the names of the plays. And if you notice, we're getting the play for every play in the database, and then we're turning it into a list, and we're sorting it. And then getting the list of players, we're taking a list, and we're sorting it. And again, we're sorting our list of players. Do you see any things that might be candidates for optimization here?
It doesn't set already perform. Well, I guess it just removes redundancy. It says that can be sorted.
Yeah, so, you know, it's basically it's resorting the same thing over and over again. That's one area. You know, tools like memoization. You know, if you've calculated something once, why do it again if you don't have to? You know, I have a helper function here called raw words that goes through and manipulates and massages the words. We're going to get the words for a play that has a particular player. And, you know, again, we're going to sort them. And, you know, what are the counts of words? You know, how many words does this actor, or not actor, but character say? How many times does a character say each individual word? And so forth. You know, how many words are there in a play? And what are the counts of them? You know, how many words we get the count of it. And so there's a lot of duplication going on here in this code. And so, you know, it might be good enough. It might not be. You know, it really depends. But on the other side, I'll embiggen this a little bit. You know, we're going through and we are getting our raw words once, and we're not doing a lot of sorts of it. We have a method now for getting unique sorted items, you know, going through and removing duplicates. We still have our hello world here. That should probably get removed. You know, having endpoints in an API that aren't needed is an issue as far as security goes. And, you know, if you have this endpoint get discovered by a bad actor, they could very well do a denial of service. And the denial of service then would, eat up resources. It's going to cost you money. It's going to, raise your power bill, and so forth. And very likely would impact other users of your system. If you notice here, we've got a get unique sorted items, and it's got plays and player, and here's the player. And so this get unique sorted items, let's find that function. Okay. So it is, in this case, basically just going through. It's not doing any memoization here. It could do memoization. And, I have to admit that this particular file, I put the original code that had been written by a human into ChatGPT and asked ChatGPT to streamline it, make it more maintainable, make it more sustainable. And this is what it, returned. I think the next step might very well be to cache results. And so as to not eat a lot of memory, put a end of life on our cache data. And then we can check in this get unique sorted items if we already have calculated this. And if so, then we don't have to do it again. So a lot of the things that are in this are, removing duplications, making code that's more sustainable. Don't recalculate things over and over and over again. If you have a good handle at refactoring, these are things that you can do. Making good choices for sorts, for instance. Understanding how your language implements things. For instance, I was doing some research into a topic in chem informatics called substructure matching. And the idea behind substructure matching is that, say you have a benzene ring with a double bonded oxygen off the bottom. Using a database of chemical structures, find the substructures that match that particular, in this case, a benzene ring with a double bonded oxygen. And, it has applications for things such as finding chemicals and substances which have similar properties, for instance. And for finding these, I was looking at using some sets of particular properties and doing set intersections to give me the list of all of the substances that had those properties. Well, it turns out that Python, Ruby, and Java, their set intersection starts at the beginning and goes all the way through a set. It doesn't recognize that, say that you have two sets, one smaller than the other. Say one goes from 1 to 100, the other goes from 1 to 1,000. Well, if it's processing the one from 1 to 1,000, looking for intersections in 1 to 100, it goes all the way up to 1,000. It doesn't stop. It's not that smart. So this might very well be a place where a more efficient algorithm could be helpful. Now, what is the best algorithm to use? Well, it depends. It depends on your data. It depends on what you're doing. And sometimes, if you're doing a search, a sequential search might actually be the fastest with the least amount of overhead. Might. It depends. So these are all different things that you can do to make your system more efficient. If you are using infrastructure as code, go through the infrastructure that you've defined. Look at the resources. Look at the metrics for utilization for those resources. Do you have an extra container or a number of containers that don't need to be running, that aren't being used? How well have you defined your pods if you're using a Kubernetes cluster, and so forth. As far as sustainability goes, while yes, having a server running hot does use a fair bit of energy, it's less than having two servers that are running warm, because you have extra overhead on the two servers. So finding those things, a lot of it has to do with knowing and understanding your system, knowing and understanding your application, and going through, do tech reviews, bring in another team and go over your architecture, talk about what you're doing, have them ask questions, because they are going to see things that you won't, because you've been staring at it so long and you just miss stuff, and that's normal. That just happens. So basically, this is the rewrite. Now, one of the things it did in the refactoring, again, is by getting our common code into a function, reducing code duplication. Now, does that mean that you should dry your code out so that it's a desert? Not necessarily. You may spend more time drying it out than you need. Again, it depends. And a lot of these things are really related to experience. I'm going to flip back. I have just a few slides left, and then if y'all have any questions, actually, while I am doing this, let's try and fix this real quick. Do it. Okay. So if this will do it, maybe. Aha. I apologize. Okay. Are you all able to see that?
Yep.
Cool. All right. Let's see if this actually came in bigger for the other slide.
It's definitely huge for us.
Pardon?
It's definitely big for us here this
Okay.
time.
I'm just curious if it's still small.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's
There's
still
a
big. Now it's way bigger. Way bigger.
Okay. So, like I said, I want to rerun this. Unfortunately, though, some of the interpreters that I'm wanting to run it against don't run in Alpine. So I would need to use a different flavor of Linux for my container. Okay. Well. Okay. So, at the end of the day, sustainability in IT is not just a trend, it's a responsibility. It's something that we all need to do. And you know, there's that saying that we do not inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children. And every IT professional plays a role. You know, that means you. Yeah, you way in the back corner, even you, all of you. Making small steps can lead to a significant change. You know, make a change, measure it. You know, demonstrate to management that, you know, I spent this amount of time and I can measure how much it's saving the company, how much it's saving the organization. And based off of that, you know, you can build into your sprint planning time for tech debt, time for continuous improvement, time for making things more sustainable. And at the end of the day, only you can promote sustainability. You know, it's a shared responsibility. It starts with individual action. And together, we can build, we can shape a future that works for both our industry and our planet. Any questions?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Kelly, I was curious, do you feel, is there a cloud vendor that you think is more green, or are there any objective reviews of the cloud vendors to give us a better
So,
insight into their
yes.
sustainability?
In terms of just power, where their electricity comes from, I'll have to dig up the URL for it, but there is a website that takes all of the major cloud vendors, you know, Microsoft, Amazon, Google. I'm not certain if they include like DigitalOcean or some of the other smaller ones. But that said, they go through region by region for what the electricity in that region is and how much carbon it outputs per kilowatt hour. And so you can make more informed choices as a result. You know, research how much water that they're using. You know, look in, and mind you, some of this you're having to trust that the vendors are actually, you know, telling you the truth and not trying to, you know, whitewash or greenwash, as the case may be. But, you know, based off of that, you can make informed decisions. And, you know, not just the electricity, you know, or the carbon footprint. You know, there's a lot more to it than that. You know, from the supply chain management all the way through, you know, recycling, disposal, water utilization. You know, I keep harping on that, but and I recognize in the aftermath of Helene that water might not be exactly on, you know, forefront in your minds for saving water, that is. Having lived in the East for all of my life, coming out here, there's more water than I thought there would be. But I also had there was a fire that the mandatory evac zone got to in about 3 or 4 miles from me. And so as a result, you know, I'm a lot more cognizant of water issues now than I might have been previously. You know, another metric to throw out. Singapore, 70% of their electrical utilization is data centers. And so, Southeast Asia, or, the southern half of the world, the global south, is recognizing that things have to change. When I was in India, in the town the city, Bangalore, the day of the conference, the air quality was 40, 50. There was a government official who flew down to give a keynote from New Delhi, and it was over 500 there. India has the highest number of people on the internet of any country, of over 800 million. And, they still don't have 100% penetration. But at the end of the day, as I've kind of gone off on a tangent, looking at that website that I mentioned, the vendor that consistently had the lowest carbon output was actually Amazon. So again, it depends, and you need to make smart choices. But at least on that one metric, Amazon was the greenest.
Any other questions for Kelly? Anybody? Bueller?
What is
Yeah.
the company do, or how does he help?
Kelly, if you didn't hear that, Chuck in the back corner was asking exactly what does your company do and how do you help the organizations that you help?
Okay. So, yeah, I kind of glossed over it. But what we do, a lot of what I've been doing over the last year and a half, frankly, is building awareness. Speaking at conferences, meeting with groups, helping them to become more aware. As far as the consciousness occurs, some of that we do is through education. We have training, and then I am about to publish the audit methodology. So basically, there's two aspects to it. There's the making software greener, and then there's the the Sustainable IT Manifesto. The Sustainable IT Manifesto, I'm getting people to proofread a certification process for that with training, as well as there's a pledge that individuals can make. There's a pledge that organizations can make as well. That will be probably out this next week. I'm going to be at a sustainablet.org meeting on Wednesday in Austin and Thursday. Beyond that, we have some other tools that we're developing. There is a goals management framework that combines the GROW framework, the SMART framework, as well as the 3 ways. So it builds in a very agile basis for, just once you have determined some goals, that, you can define them and use this framework to, in a agile method, be able to achieve the goals and work towards them. So those are a number of the things we do. A lot of it is, like I said, it's still education. It's going to be that way for quite some time. And, some of it's training. I am in the process of getting a certification for IT mentorship. And once that is done and I have the certification, one of the services that we will offer beyond coming in and helping to do the audits, beyond, helping you to develop your sustainability practices, marketing as a sustainable IT coach, and doing, some more from a coaching standpoint, because a lot of people, oh, you're a sustainable IT consultant. All right, what sort of things do you consult on? Whereas to a lot of people's minds, they have an idea what a coach would do. I'm not sure if I answered what you were looking for or not.
Nope, Chuck seems pretty happy.
Okay.
Anybody else? Anybody?
Kelly, it feels like we really need a way to quantify this more easily to begin to make the argument, the business case for why this is important. And as you're going through your talk, I couldn't help but think about, and this isn't really dated and not really probably the right way, but for some reason, just TPC kept popping in my mind. 25 years ago, when we would use TPC to determine that is this database the right database for this type of workload. And if I had some metrics similar to that with cloud vendors, as I'm building solutions today, that gives me a relatively easy way to assess that, at least to have an idea of it, and then potentially, as you were arguing earlier, just try it and see if it actually does what we think, and then adjust from there.
It's coming.
Sorry?
It's coming. So at this point, there really isn't a standard reporting method or framework. There's several to choose from. It hasn't really settled out. And then for the most part, a lot of the sustainability reporting, the ESG reporting, environment, social governance, has not really focused on IT's impact. So like, for instance, if you have an office building, what is the entire heating cost? What is the entire electrical cost? The sustainableiT.org has put together a set of, an oncology of, things. Here are things to measure. But as far as any tooling goes, as far as any, automations for those sort of things, it's coming. It's not there yet. And unfortunately, in a lot of ways, outside of being in a cloud vendor, Amazon does have some tools for measuring your footprint. But a lot of things they still, consider to be their secret sauce, and they don't talk a lot about. There's also a set of, I don't want to say design patterns, but green software patterns that the Green Software Foundation has been collecting and publishing. One of the things that I have here on this is there is about, 10 pages or so of resources. So this is all in the PDF. But some of the things are mentioned there. It's coming. I hope to be doing a lot of that work in the next few months to the next year myself. Having a framework for doing the auditing and defining, here are the metrics, here's what to gather, and from there having things that have a dashboard, for lack of a better term, or so if you measure, for instance, the cost of a query over time, and then do some A/B testing, measure the other query, you can see which one's going to be more efficient, more effective, to your point. Some databases are really suited to certain types of data. You know, that's why we have relational databases. That's why we have hierarchical databases. That's why we have, you know, all these different types of databases over time. You know, you have ones that are, you know, vertical, like Cassandra. And, you know, frankly, at the end of the day, not enough people make choices of what tools they're going to use based on the data. You know, everything that we do in IT is data manipulation in one way or another. I have seen too many project kickoffs that before they even, you know, have a handle on what they're going to be doing, how they're going to be manipulating the data, or what their data even is, they're like, all right, we're going to use this design pattern, we're going to use that design pattern. And in a lot of ways, that's putting the cart before the horse. If you don't start out from the data and understanding your data, it's very probable that you're going to end up with a bad design. Off soapbox.
All right. I guess I'm looking here. Trying to adjust to our new camera situation. Kelly, it's been fantastic. I really appreciate you taking the time. Great presentation. We'll definitely share the slides on Discord. You'll get a link also for the YouTube so that you can have that. Feel free to share it with people, let people know that you spoke at the Swamp, and which I know is a huge career goal for most of us.
You know, actually, I'm more than happy to come back. I've got some other topics that you guys might find interesting.
That's good because I'm always looking for topics. Everyone here knows this is a weekly meetup. I'm pretty aggressive about finding speakers, but
yeah,
you've been great. I'm going to stop the recording here. Stick around for just a second because it'll upload a little bit so that we'll get like a really high quality version. But thanks again, and I really appreciate it. Oh, I got to find where this button is.